Hello and welcome to the Horn Call podcast. My name is James Bolden, publications editor for the International Horn Society, and your host. My special guest today is Dr. John Ericson, professor of horn at Arizona State University and an acknowledged expert on many things related to horn playing and horn pedagogy. He's probably most well known as one of the co-founders of Horn Matters, the online magazine dedicated to horn playing and horn teaching. John and I go back many, many years to my college days when I was a student at the Brevard Music Center. I had the opportunity to work with him. And since then, he's been a trusted friend, colleague, and mentor in a lot of ways to me during my career. The topic of our discussion today was innovation in horn teaching, and in it we consider a number of things that we kind of take to be standard in the field of horn pedagogy, and we talk about why it might be good to reconsider them from time to time. So I think it's a fascinating conversation, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. One point of interest in our conversation is that I was having some connection troubles early in the interview, and unfortunately I had to ditch some of that audio. The quality was just too degraded for it to actually be salvageable. And what happens is the conversation is going to pick up at a certain point after I had to cut that audio when we're talking about one of John's many publications, his modern preparatory etudes for the horn. I don't think you'll have any trouble picking up the thread of that conversation, but I just wanted to let you know what's going on there. And if you haven't done so already, I hope you will be sure to read the February 2021 issue of the Horn Call, either in print or digital format. John has a very nice article in there about natural horn playing during the Baroque era, and of course lots of other great content both online and in print. So without further delay, here is my conversation with John Ericson. I'm so excited for my guest today, Dr. John Ericson from Arizona State University. John, we've known each other a long time. You've always been a great teacher and mentor to me, and a big influence on lots of horn students all over the place. So I'm excited to have you on the podcast today. So we're going to be talking about innovation in horn teaching and performance, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is a time frame where we can really, especially with, we've just been through this COVID thing for a while, and it's a good time to just kind of rethink a lot of stuff. I think there's definitely horn teaching, a lot of the materials we use. I mean, it's kind of a crime almost that we use so much 19th century materials. So this is a topic I've been kind of the part of we were talking before the podcast. I believe that I had just given a presentation to our brass area here at ASU about conventional wisdom and how that relates to, our thinking. And one of my initial points was about how we have, as teachers and as students, we have like toolboxes. I use the analogy toolboxes. And a student starts out with a pretty small toolbox, and it's probably full of sort of conventional wisdom stuff you picked up from your band directors and people like that. So part of being an effective teacher is developing a larger toolbox of materials you can use, ideas, better understanding of different players' mechanics. There's more than one way to play. A lot of things like that are kind of big elements of what makes teaching more effective. If you have more things. I mean, there's some teachers that are well known, but they probably have, in truth, the kind of small toolboxes. Like they really know one particular type of teaching very well. And that is part of what I think drives I use Coprosh, but some of the teachers that really, really use Coprosh, I think that's kind of the only material they really know. And they maybe need to just kind of like take a second and go like, there are other materials I could cover this stuff with that are not published in, the 18 whatevers.
Right.
That you can use.
No, and I think, going back to your preparatory etudes book, modern preparatory etudes book, you mentioned the Vern Reynolds etudes, but your book seems like it's a welcome addition because, as you said, it doesn't it doesn't get nearly as difficult as the Reynolds Etudes, but it does deal with sort of odd meters and unusual intervals, and
Mhm.
maybe even venturing into sort of less than tonal areas. Could you talk a little bit about how you? I mean, I'd never known you were a composer, but but the
I
etudes
didn't.
are
I didn't know either, really.
well, but the etudes are
But
well done. I mean, I've been using them here and there with some students of mine, and
mhm.
been getting good response. So how on earth did you come up with these things?
Yeah, well, there's kind of a story there too. I mean, I sort of dabbled with composing when I was a student. I think a lot of students do, and I had like materials around. So some of the etudes are sort of based on materials drawn out of duets and things that I wrote that weren't very good. But I worked them into etude ideas. A lot of it was just little ideas would get in my mind, and I would like want to write something on that idea. And then there's like Easter eggs all through the book for experienced horn teachers, like tempo markings that are like there's one from the Schmutzig book. There's one from I got an Alla Polacca and a Saraband, and I
Mm.
just got things that are just sort of out of the box a little bit, but they entertained me, and hopefully they entertain some teachers out there as well.
Yeah, and there's a couple of more extended works towards the end, right, that are sort of loosely based on existing solo repertoire.
Right. So I got an idea from I think I believe it was the Cugnot Etudes. He had like these review etudes at the end of sections that had like multiple. It was themes from the group of etudes preceding it.
Hmm.
So I had an idea to write something that resembled solo horn works, although they're really kind of just they're not really great works, I don't think. But I think they'll be entertaining for like a studio class or something. What I did was I used materials from all of the etudes spread out into four solo horn works, which are loosely based on and patterned on famous horn solo works. So,
Hmm.
like the Persichetti Parallel becomes the Ericson Allegory.
Oh, I love it.
So you've got like different little things like that thrown in, and they resemble them, in general character section by section, but it's just materials from the etudes. So it can serve as a nice review for the book. I'm imagining they might be a nice jury piece to do one of those
Hmm.
if you've worked
Hmm.
through the book. Just I don't know. I'm imagining people can use it different ways. I'm not imagining they're going to be like American Horn Competition required etude number whatever. I don't think they're going to be as good as the Vern Reynolds etudes. He definitely was thinking some of them would be performed as solo horn works,
Hmm.
and I'm more just like kind of ironically saying you can if you want to, but they're really just kind of review etude things. But I hope they're interesting enough.
Well, and I think because because of the level where they are, it gives the player a chance to work out some of the things that they're going to need to be able to do anyway to perform the solo, the unaccompanied works effectively, and then but maybe not have to deal with so many of the difficult things in the original works. But I like it. I love the way it's laid out. And this is you self-publish these, right? All of your materials.
Well, I did. So there's a whole history there too, because I moved originally. I was publishing these things just here, having them printed locally.
Hmm.
And eventually, partially, I just got tired of mailing things. I don't know. Mailing things is not really like my hobby, you know? So eventually, I switched it all to like an e-publication format that I directly sold. But that also became kind of I began to worry about selling to Europe and things like that, which wasn't really legal and
Hmm.
stuff. So I retooled them into Kindle ebooks,
Okay.
and I sold them that way for a little while only. And then finally figured out, like, I could just retool these things a little bit and they would sell them as print publications anywhere in the world. And
Hmm.
it's actually a great system for the publisher. I'll, because this book, any of my books, they're available worldwide. If you were in, say, England and you wanted to buy it, it's actually printed in England and you can get it very quickly. But they're printed on demand, so there's no inventory. And so that's kind of the genius of this whole Amazon printing model is that there is no inventory and they print it on demand and they ship it out very quickly.
Okay.
So it's really it's the sort of thing it's going to put, I mean, I'm sure they're hoping to put traditional publishing out of business because why wouldn't they want to do that? Because they want to
Hmm.
make money. It's definitely a model that works nicely.
Hmm.
So from my end, I put it all up. I have to set it up a certain way. So I do wish, like, if you look at it, you'll think the music. I wish the music was just a little bigger, but I have margins I have to deal with
Ah,
them and stuff. So it's just the way it is. But it's priced low enough. Hopefully, nobody's really thinking like I don't know. It's still, I think it's a good value, and you can buy it anywhere in the world easily, print or
yeah.
Kindle.
Yeah, and the print version I bought it came very quickly for one, and then it was a very good quality. I mean, I didn't notice
Hmm.
any corners being cut or anything like that. So
Yeah.
it's definitely that, and your other publications are worth a look. Okay, yeah, we were talking about conventional wisdom on topics. Is there any one that comes to mind that you end up having to talk to students or other folks about more often than not? One that kind of just keeps coming up for you.
Oh yeah. Well, there's several really good ones there. Probably the biggest one is mouthpiece pressure.
Okay.
So, Farkas, he did. I mean, I saw him give master classes. I took a few lessons with him back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing in the master classes, at least twice, I heard him say he regretted putting that picture of the horn on the shelf in the
Mm-hmm.
Farkas book because of two reasons. One is it was sort of dangerous. He was a little worried people might have a horn fall off. But more to the point, he says something along the lines of that basically was teaching you to use too little pressure. Like he in his later publications, he sort of walks it back a bit on the light mouthpiece pressure thing, not using too
Mm-hmm.
much. But I think a lot of people, they just see that picture in the Farkas book and they think I've got to use light mouthpiece pressure, or my head's going to explode, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. So it ends up that people, I think, work too hard to use too little pressure. But the conventional wisdom is that's the right answer. People will tell you don't use too heavy horn pressure. Blah, 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 that's causing your problems.
Mm-hmm.
You need to search for like a Goldilocks kind of a thing. Not too much, not too little, but just
Mm-hmm.
right. Another part of that too is mouthpiece pressure is going to vary not only by register, but it's going to vary by dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't really like see that, I think, as clearly as they need to. So you're playing like loud, you're going to need more mouthpiece pressure. It's part of keeping a seal with your horn and supporting your embouchure and stuff. So that's like the biggest topic area. I end up talking to people about it more than you would think you should because it's just such a strong right answer. The correct answer is don't use too much mouthpiece pressure. But I think there's more of a problem people using too little or trying to use too little who are like good students instead of just trying to sound good.
Right. What are some of the symptoms of a player, a student who might come in and, it probably doesn't take you very long to suss out, okay, this student clearly thinks they're using too much pressure, and this is why they're
Well, they'll tell you it.
okay.
Number one, you know, but also you can kind of hear it in the sound, especially as they go up in the range. If just a little more contact with the mouthpiece, sometimes just clarifies everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of, but they're trying. Again, it's sort of a category of people. A famous person told them to do something,
Mm-hmm.
and I better do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's another big topic related to that I talk about actually probably a lot more in actual lessons is tonguing. And again, you don't want to talk about if somebody sounds good, you don't want to like make them overthink it, right?
Right.
You just
Right.
want to sound good. That's kind of the genius behind Song and Wind.
Right.
But at the same time, some people don't sound good, so you have to like really drill down into it and stuff. And basically, there's a strong thing that Farkas says is to never ever tongue on the lips. Period. Basically, in the art of French horn playing, except unless you're doing sforzandos.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the only exception, the way he worded it in the book. And he walked that back a little bit in the later publications too. But if you look at like the MRI horn studies and stuff, I mean, clearly you can see the tongue is touching the lip on most any articulation that you can watch,
Especially in the low range. Yeah.
especially in the low range. But as I tell students, I actually I was here teaching at ASU, so I'd had a career and I was working my way along. But there was a point in time where I realized I wasn't tonguing the way I thought I was tonguing.
Mm.
So I thought I was doing something where my tongue was on the low notes, it was touching my lips. But as I went higher, it kind of arched up, which it does. But the front of my tongue, depending on the context, still was touching my lips.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of had a crisis about that because that's not what any book says. And it's not what I thought I was doing. But actually, there are books that say things like that about that topic. I mean, the key quote I like to go back to is from the primary studies book by Anton Horner, which was
Okay.
posted in like 1939, so it's a
Mm-hmm.
fairly old book. But he says in the little prefatory comment to approach each note and tongue it as though you had a tiny hair on the end of your tongue and you're just trying to push that out of your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And if you tongue that way, and it's really a very normal kind of tonguing, really, but it sounds completely different than what your band director told you to tongue on your gums or whatever.
Right. Yeah. And that sort of hits at one of those points that you mentioned, going back to Farkas putting the horn on the shelf. I'm sure at one point that was a technique he used to try to get a student who was maybe using too much pressure to back off for that one
Mm-hmm.
time in that one place for that specific student. And so there's that danger of when we say things or put them in print or put them, in any kind of format where other people are going to see them, for them to be taken out of context and kind of carried away. I mean, so many things, a little bit is going to help maybe, but then if you do it all the time, it's not good at all.
Yeah, and you're going to say different things to different students.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, that's correct. And some people will need like the big adjustment in a
Mm-hmm.
different direction. It's all a process. It's kind of like I think of peeling layers on an onion. You have to kind of work your way down through layers of little sort of semi problems and things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the other, if I go to another topic, and this is, and I actually I always mention this too. I mean, I actually played at Farkas's 50th wedding anniversary reception. I have no axe to grind against Farkas, but I'm going to bring one other negative Farkas point up here too, which is there's a section on mouthpieces in the thing where he has a thing that basically says something along the lines of no one change of mouthpiece is going to revolutionize your playing.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I would say definitely a mouthpiece change can revolutionize your playing. It can change your life.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it can be totally a thing that makes a lot of change. And as I was teaching along for a long time, I was sort of reluctant to experiment with mouthpieces too much.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of like, we got to just kind of work on the playing where it is and see what we can do. But there was a point, especially mouthpieces have just been getting better and better in recent
Mm-hmm.
years, and easier to obtain better mouthpieces all the time. So probably working with some particular student, and we're working on articulations. And again, you work on articulations a lot with people because they do need to sound a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
There's a thing that's I go back to a quote. I studied with Vern Reynolds at Eastman, and he was quotable, if nothing else, for sure,
Mm-hmm.
in my life. And one of the things he said was something along the lines, because you never know how short some conductor is going to ask you to play some passage. So you do have to work on those short articulations, especially, right?
Oh, yes.
And so I was working with somebody, and finally I just handed them like a different mouthpiece,
Mm-hmm.
which I knew was probably a better one. And it just like instantly, just like that, their articulations were like a lot better. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, we got to like explore this area a little more. So over time, I've got like a kind of a narrow range of mouthpieces that not that everybody's going to play the same mouthpiece. People have different setups, but within a range, you can definitely improve some problems and things. And I think there's people using like, the famous person's mouthpiece that's not really a suitable mouthpiece for
Right.
them. Might have been for that famous person, but you are you and they are they, and, kind of work your way along and through this thing. One thing that's been particularly interesting, I've mentioned this in the brass area presentation. People are always interested in this because until very recently, you basically couldn't buy stainless steel mouthpieces. Like this is like,
Mm-hmm.
who had a stainless steel mouthpiece,
Right.
because you couldn't really make them. But now you can with
Right.
CNC lathes and stuff. So what I was saying to students, and I got a follow-up question about this, and I don't know the answer of why. I mean, this is like if you wanted to do some kind of extensive dissertation thing on it, feel free. But what I noticed in my own teaching here is about a third, if you have people use the same mouthpiece in brass or stainless steel,
Mm-hmm.
let's say, which you can do with certain brands, which I won't name now, but about a third of students definitely sound better on brass.
Mm-hmm.
About a third sound definitely better on stainless steel, and about a third you can't even tell a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Just like so little difference that's like, yeah, I can't really hear anything, and I have no idea why. It's just a
Yeah. Yeah.
mystery of some kind of thing with your oral cavity, your horn. I don't know.
No, and it is interesting. There's, I've talked to various people, as I'm sure you have, about, and people definitely have opinions on them,
Hmm.
and more
Right.
often than not, they'll share them with me. So it's interesting. Different people
Well,
have a different way of describing what they hear. Yeah.
yeah, and you could hear different things, but also I mean, for sure, there's like a bias against stainless steel, also just because that's like, the new kid or something,
And
I
it looks
guess.
different. Yeah, you can tell when somebody's got a stainless mouthpiece. It looks different.
And I've always mentioned to people, I've always wondered, like, if some drum corps went to all stainless steel mouthpieces, like, what would that sound like? I don't know.
Hmm.
Might be kind of awesome, And again,
Hmm.
there's a point where we're kind of close to that tipping point. I think somebody's going to think of this, and then we'll see what it sounds like. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and going back to the thing about Philip Farkas, I mean, he is such a revered person in our community that it's difficult to deal with that, as far as questioning some of the things he put out there. But I think you're absolutely right to do that, and you're doing it in a respectful way. I mean, at no point are we saying he was not the character that he was. He clearly was a major figure
Oh yeah.
in the development of the horn and furthering horn pedagogy. But to your point about mouthpieces, the variety of mouthpieces that he had available to him, even as like principal horn in the Chicago Symphony or a professor at Indiana University, was like minuscule
Yeah,
compared to what. Yeah.
well, there was a variety, but most of them were bad. That's also part of it, because, but I mean, you can't really blame back in that day, but thousandths of an inch just really matter on
Hmm.
mouthpieces.
Well, and I
Um,
think I read somewhere that, this is apocryphal, but I think it hits on the point of there were a lot of players back in the day who kind of had to stop their careers early, and they just figured, oh, their chops were blown or they were just getting old. But it may actually have been faulty equipment. And they may have had a valve leaking that they just didn't know, or the lead pipe was going and there was just not reliable, repairs to be found where they were, or they just didn't even think, oh, well, this may be an equipment issue.
well, not to mention things like metal allergies,
Hmm.
which is
Absolutely.
a whole nother topic that is really worth. I mean, back in the day, people just thought they lost their lip and that was kind of it.
Hmm.
But metal allergies were part of that issue as well, of people so-called losing their lip. So in my own case, I had a sort of a personal mouthpiece, not fun time for a
Hmm.
while, where I had to quit using a gold-plated rim and I had to switch to a plastic rim, which I liked okay, but it was better than not playing. Put it that way,
Hmm.
but not my favorite material. Like most people try plastic and they're kind of like, yeah, thanks.
It's incredibly dry.
It's
Yeah.
very dry feeling. But with COVID coming around, I knew I should be able to play on H coat. I really should.
Hmm.
But I just was so slick, I wasn't used to it. So, but once we hit like March, and I was just like practicing at home and teaching lessons, and I'm like, I can do this, you
Hmm.
know. So I had to basically force myself to use a H coat rim for about 2 weeks, and I finally got used to it, and that's what I'm still playing on now, and I'm liking it
Hmm.
just fine. It feels nice, really. It feels
Hmm.
very nice. So I enjoyed it better than plastic.
Hmm.
So, but this is like an option that was absolutely not available to somebody back in the 1950s, even, let's say. I mean, they could
Right.
get a plastic rim maybe, but with great difficulty.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's I remember reading about that on Horn Matters. You were talking about going through that process of figuring out that was what was going on. And that was new to me, the idea that one could develop a metal allergy. I guess at some point I just assumed incorrectly that
Hmm.
you either are allergic or you're not, but that's
Yeah,
clearly not the case.
yeah. Apparently, they can progress through your life. Some of the allergies and things. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's so much research to be done, and I think that's good. I think it would be a terrible state of affairs if we all knew everything already.
Yeah, but at the same time, this is just such a golden age for equipment. You can buy some of the best horns like ever made. You can buy
Hmm.
some of the best mouthpieces ever made. Um, it's just a really really golden age for a lot of horn playing. So
Hmm.
there's a lot to celebrate there. That's for sure in the horn world.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I wanted to ask you. We were talking about sort of the overall topic of this podcast is innovation in horn teaching and performance, and it sounds like you're doing some pretty innovative things at ASU in the brass area, particularly with regards to chamber music.
Right. We had in the summer. So the summer of 2020 was the kind of COVID reset summer for a lot of people. So
Hmm.
all the brass faculty, we were around town, because where else were we going to go, right? So we were here. So we were meeting once, twice a week and talking about things. And we came up with an idea to do an online brass chamber music program.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it was using a platform called BandLab as the basis, which our band directors had found. So we recorded a project using that to kind of test it. And this was all, the other part of the idea was these are materials that are available for free for
Mm-hmm.
students. So you don't have to like, go buy some expensive program or do something. So
Right.
we recorded a work in a band lab, and then we made a video of the work as well, which was the Paradiso, Cinema Paradiso, I think is what it was,
Mm-hmm.
thing. And Joe Bergstall put the video together using a video platform that's available for free for ASU students.
Mm-hmm.
So with that launched, we knew it would work. So the next project was then working out a thing for students. So initially we had kind of a just an idea to divide all the students into brass quintets that
Mm-hmm.
we could, and you could get almost all of them into brass quintets actually. And then we initially were just going to do some pieces, but then we had a big idea. So the big idea was to focus on the music of BIPOC composers
Okay.
in arrangements by Luther Henderson, which he had done for the Canadian Brass. So almost all the groups did those works because there's a variety of levels of those works as well. So that and it all came together. I mean, it was we didn't try to push people over the edge to make them like over busy, because
Mm-hmm.
everybody's like, academic faculty seem to think people have unlimited time to write papers or something, right? And I've been real careful about that with the horn teaching because of everything. But the project came together really well. And right now, as we're talking right now, the students are finishing up. Some of the groups are finishing up videos. Not all the students are doing videos
Mm-hmm.
with them, but they're going to do videos similar to what we did as faculty with them as well. So yeah, it's been a very interesting semester. So next semester they're planning a similar project,
Mm-hmm.
but using music of women composers. So it'll be brass quintets by women composers as
No,
the
that's
focus.
That's fantastic, and that strikes me that that's innovative on a number of levels. So they're having to use this software to basically multi-track their recordings. They're each
Right.
individually recording their parts. Then they're doing the same thing for video, and then at some point someone has to mix it and master it and then sync it with the video. So those are all skills that I had no idea I would need, 15 years ago. And
Right. So we're using this as a time to work on those skills because this is what skills you can work on right now really well. Actually,
mhm.
it's a kind of an ideal time to learn it, and hopefully things will move on in the next semester eventually, so where we can get back to playing ensembles more normally and stuff. In
Mhm.
my own teaching this fall, I've been able to do finally have a system where I can teach about half the lessons live and half on Zoom,
Mhm.
working with the protocols that we have at ASU. And
Right.
that's been helpful. And I actually, I find it kind of humbling actually for most of the students. I'm the only live instruction they've had this fall semester.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I'm glad to be in that position to do that, but it's kind of humbling and stuff too. The spring semester, I'm actually going to be on sabbatical. I don't know if
Oh, okay.
you know that.
No,
I
I didn't know that.
applied for that. I've never had a sabbatical. For those that don't know, it's like you get basically it's a semester off from teaching, but they still pay you. But you have to have a project you're doing for the sabbatical. So my project is so back in the day when I was a doctoral student, I made a natural horn working with Rick Serafinoff and
Mhm.
some other projects when I was a doctoral student at IU. And effectively, I was kind of his first apprentice, although we didn't really think of it that way, but I kind of was. And also made converted a single horn into a horn that pretty closely resembles a Gumpert model 19th century horn with crooks
Mhm.
and some things, and made some lead pipes and stuff. I did enough that I've got some skills, but I haven't done very much with them in the last 10 years.
Mhm.
So the project is basically a horn making project
All
where
right.
I've got several things planned. First thing is definitely I'm gonna revisit the Gumpert model horn that I built. I plan to put a different valve section on it
Okay.
and do some kind of heavy rebuilding on it. I think I can make it better. And then I've got another horn that I'm working with a couple different horns, putting the parts together to make a copy of a Schmidt model 19th century, a Schmidt 19th century valve horn.
Okay.
uh, I'll see where it goes from there. I think that'll take me probably about half a semester, and I'll see what happens from there. But it's definitely, I'm looking forward to it. I basically had, typically, faculty does some kind of giant book
Uh-huh.
or something, make a recording. I've made recordings before. I thought about the giant book, but I really don't have a desire to write the giant book. I'm just kind of like, no, no giant book for John Erickson. Just write small books. So I want to do something hands-on. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a very hands-on project. So it's kind of looking back. But I'm kind of excited about it. Just from going, and really I'm very excited about it. Actually, it just sounds like a lot of fun, especially after COVID, to just go out in the garage and be like soldering things and
Yeah. Yeah.
cutting tubing and taking out dents and figuring out this design and stuff. It's going to be really fun.
Well, I hope you'll share some of that through Horn Matters if you can.
Yeah, I will. I will have some posts along the way. Ultimately, I have to generate a report on the project for ASU.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes total sense to just kind of report on it as I go. And then I've got all that materials there to put into my report for ASU.
That's awesome. Hey, if you get really good, there could be the Ericsson model natural horn at some point.
Who knows? I
Yeah.
think the thing that's hard, like I made lead pipes with Rick Serafino, but that is just like I don't have enough tools to do that. There's a point where I really would have to tool up a lot to do much beyond but still my basic goal is just to get my soldering
Mm-hmm.
feeling good and comfortable again, get some of the skills back and try to expand on those skills and just see where it goes. Who knows where it'll go? Yeah, exactly.
That's great, and that's fantastic to hear. And maybe now this is a good stopping point. But I just want to thank you again, John, for being my guest today on the Horn Call podcast. And good luck with everything, and especially good luck with the sabbatical project.
Well, thank you and good luck to you as well.